Hi, I'm Holly Benson with the Milwaukee Public Library. As Victoria said, we are with Education Outreach Services, and this is our last curriculum resource deep dive for the 21-22 school year. Can't believe it's May already. So thank you so much for joining us along this adventure, and I hope we are going to have one more awesome curriculum resource to show you today that's going to get you excited to engage your students with LibraryNow resources. So happy May. And please post in the chat what your favorite flower is. Mine are white daffodils, so they are always the first ones to come up. So I love seeing them around town. And today we're going to talk about cultivating global thinking. So with global thinking, we are going to review some of the global thinking routines that might be helpful for you in your classroom to get your students starting to become globally minded citizens. And then specifically, we're going to make those connections. How can we take that routine and connect it to one of our LibraryNow resources? So some insider information is that our LibraryNow webpage is going to be have a new look to it in the next coming weeks. And the resource that I'm going to share with you today is actually not going to be on it currently, and it will be from the New York Times. So what I think is just absolutely wonderful is with the Milwaukee Public Library, you can read a ton of newspapers, and the New York Times is one of them. So you do not need to have a subscription. All you need to do is to go through LibraryNow, and as an educator, you'll have access to the New York Times, and you'll have access to a specific resource called the Learning Network. So we're going to share with you today what that is, so that you know how to take advantage of it. So a quick review, what is LibraryNow? LibraryNow is a website designed by the Milwaukee Public Library specifically for you and your students. And this is for your students to be able to get streamlined, easy access to the best Milwaukee Public Library resources, digital resources. How your students connect. If your students are at a partner school, they will have an easy way to connect. They will not need to use their library card as an adult would. They will actually have a student ID that is going to be very similar to their barcode. And so there might be a couple tweaks to their student ID, but for the most part, their barcode will be their student ID from their school. And their PIN is typically auto set as their birth year. And if you have any concerns or questions, if your students need help accessing, reach out to us at librarynow@milwaukee.gov. So today we're going to talk about global thinking, and I'm going to spend most of today referencing several wonderful articles and items available online from Boyd Spenzilla, as well as a few of her counterparts. So global thinking, the capacity and disposition to understand and act on issues of global significance. Why do we need it? We need our students to be prepared for a complex and an interdependent world. We want our students to be able to cultivate curiosity about the world beyond what's immediate in their area, beyond their neighborhood. We want them to think, how is someone across the world being impacted by something that I'm also being impacted by? We want them to promote empathy and cultural perspective taking. We want our students to recognize their own and others' perspectives, and think about and articulate them thoughtfully and empathetically and respectfully. And we want our students to communicate across differences and to bridge what makes them different and find ways to connect, embrace cultural differences as assets, etc. So how we want to do that is there's many ways, but we're going to talk specifically about cultivating global thinking, using discussion stems, and really just making it a part of your classroom routines that we ask these kinds of questions, we have these discussions, because we want globally competent students who can prepare for complex societies and a global economy by learning how to investigate their world beyond their immediate environment. We want to frame the issues and make sense of significant issues. So the routines that I'm going to go over real quick, these are all available, developed by Boyd Spenzilla on Project Zero, Harvard Graduate School of Education. So if you just type in Project Zero into a Google search, you're going to find a wealth of thinking routines. I'm going to specifically look at a couple of the thinking routines that are for global perspectives and global thinking. That is the 3 Ys: step in, step out, step back, Beauty and Truth, Circles of Action, How Else and Why, and Unveiling Stories. And to do that, we're going to look at one of our LibraryNow resources. So the New York Times has an incredible department called the Learning Network. And if you have not seen it before, please take time to explore it. You will find wonderful ways to bring a lot of cultural relevance and a lot of current events into your classroom without losing any content time. There are lesson plans. There is a ton of material that integrates really nicely into the content areas and gets your students thinking critically. So one way we're going to do that is with the 3 whys. So the 3 whys is a global thinking routine that helps nurture a disposition to discern a significance about a topic. So if our students are hearing multiple different pieces of information, a bunch of things are happening at once, how can they actually realize that this one has significance and this one is where my attention should go? So that is the 3 whys. Why might this topic matter to me? Why might it matter to people around me? And why might it matter to the world? Ask those questions. Have your students be asking those questions for themselves, for their peers, so that they are starting to think this is actually important for me, the people around me, and for the global society or global good. And one way you can have your students do that is to start exploring the Learning Network themselves. Provide for them several different articles available through the New York Times, which is free through LibraryNow. And your students can decide which of these actually is serving the 3 whys, which of these is important to me, my area, and the world. And there's lots of different ways your students can engage with the Learning Network, and I'm going to highlight different features throughout today's presentation. The 2 here are writing prompts. So your student will have access to the article. They have free access. They won't need to actually log into the New York Times or have an account. They have free access through LibraryNow to read the articles that are there. And then there are writing prompts to get them thinking about those topics. So have them look at the most recent ones, decide one that meets the 3 whys, and respond to the writing prompts. Another example is current event conversations. So here students have looked at those previous articles, and what the New York Times did was they pulled out specific things that students were saying about them and actually kind of consolidated what is most meaningful to many students. What are many students saying about this current events topic? Really gets students to start thinking about other people's perspectives when they're reading from the words of people who are their same age, who are reading that same article and might be impacted in unique ways. The next global thinking routine is step in, step out, step back. This one really nurtures a disposition to take social and cultural perspective responsibility. And so for this one, I really think the Film Club is a great resource from the New York Times. Students can choose a topic and then they step in. They say, given what we see and know about this topic, what do we think this person might feel, believe, know, or experience? There's a really great short film on Film Club called The Conversation with Native Americans on Race. I find it really impactful, and it gives the students a great opportunity to do that step in, step out, step back. So what else would you like or need to learn to understand this person's perspective more? They could pick a specific person from that video and say, you know what, this person said something really interesting. How might I learn more about that topic or concern that they had? And then step back. Given your exploration of this perspective so far, what do you notice about your own perspective? So they can then step back and say, how has this impacted me? How has my perspective shifted having known this information? Another wonderful global thinking routine is called Beauty and Truth. And I'm going to read actually the quote right from Project Zero. So Project Zero says, with Beauty and Truth, students explore complex interactions between beauty and truth and consider how journalists and artists comment on and communicate ideas about the world. This routine also helps students navigate the overwhelming quantities of information accessible in an increasingly visually informed world. So what are these images actually saying? What's being portrayed? And with these 4 questions, you're getting your students really thinking not only what's happening in this picture, but what's beautiful in this picture? What is the truth of this image or this story? And what does that beauty and truth reveal or conceal through that image? So this is a great way for students to really think critically about photojournalism or also they could read full articles as well. So I think a hug scene around the world is a great example to have your students really think, what does this image express? What is the beauty and the truth in this? Then there's a lot of other places that you can be getting these resources. So I've kind of highlighted them, but along with that beauty and truth image, the picture prompt, there's also, like I said, a lesson plan. So here the author of that lesson gives us a short synopsis and then asks for in the comments how they want you to engage. Read the article, interpret it, learn more about the families. So this is kind of how the New York Times is providing lesson materials for you. They go more in depth depending on the different ones. Picture prompts have like a built lesson plan for them. And they are changing constantly. So here's a lesson, or here's a picture prompt about little free libraries. I love those. Here's a picture prompt about creative juices and expression, about constructive criticism. And so really having our students look at these images and find the beauty and the truth, and with new images that are very exciting that are coming out daily. Circles of action is another global thinking routine that I want to highlight. With this one, this routine is for organizing one's understanding of a topic through concept mapping. And in the concept map, they're thinking, who's in my inner circle, my friends, family, the people I know, who's in my community, my school, my neighborhood, and who's in the world. And here you can really think about, how is this action event impacting those people? How could this impact my inner circle? Or how can I influence my inner circle to take action on this? So if our students see challenges happening around them, but they don't know what they can do about it, we want them to start thinking, where are their circles of influence? How can they influence their inner circle? How can they have say and influence in their community and therefore then in their world? And there's a lot of student opinion pieces that are available on the Learning Network. That's a great place for students to exercise, being able to see that other people are sharing their thoughts, sharing their opinions. That's one way that you can engage the world and take action. You could create student opinion pieces. But with circles of action, we really want our students to think that they have the capacity to take action on the issues that are important to them. How else and why? The Learning Network is not just for our ELA classes and our social studies and current events. There are numerous ways to engage with science and math. And one way I really like that is these graphs. So every few days, they will put a graph as one of the images, and your students will actually look at a different graph that is currently available in the current New York Times, and they will start analyzing it. What is this graph saying? So along with actually using this as a math lesson, because there's lesson materials that accompany the graphs, you could also have your students using some global thinking. So how else and why? A routine for cultivating a disposition to communicate across differences. And I'm going to read this one. Participating respectfully and effectively in discourse communities other than our own may sometimes require using local expressions, employing different language or symbol systems, attending to body language and cultural norms, or communication and personal space. So what if I displayed this graph in front of my students and said, tell me about it? Well, they would be speaking to you or to their peers in the room. But what if I said, okay, you're going to present this graph, tell a CEO about it, or tell someone who leads a local nonprofit about it, tell someone who is a Democrat and tell someone who is a Republican, have them think, who is it that I'm talking to? What do I want to say? How else can I say it? So think about their intention, their audience, the situation, and how they can frame what they're saying, their tone, their body language, so that they are coming across and they're communicating most effectively for them. So it's all about understanding the people, your audience, understanding the numerous ways you can present something, and also learning how to navigate those. So what I want to say, but how else can I say it? And then also, what's another way I could say it? How else can I say it and why? And so you repeat that question again and again. I have a different audience. How else could I say it? I have this audience. How else can I say it? And I think graphs are a neat way to do it because The graphs are very visual, and you're having your students interpret. So they're speaking, they're thinking, and now they have to think, who also am I thinking out loud to? And then also, again, there's lesson plans that go along with those graphs. So here's another example about population dynamics. And here are questions. What do you notice? What do you wonder? How does this relate? Join the conversation. So there's actual substance to the article along, where there's lesson plans that accompany it. And the next one is unveiling stories. There is a lot of different thinking strategies available through Project Zero, and this is the last one I'm going to show. And I think this is a great way for us to uncover some of the hidden heroes in our community, even having students read a local newspaper to start understanding the stories that are amongst and around them in their community. So it's simple, a routine to reveal the multiple layers of meaning, but also a great way to get to know certain people. I grabbed this one out of the lesson of a day. It's about a photographer. The students read about it, and then they answer these 5 simple questions. What is the story? What is the human story? What is the world story? So how does this person impact the world? What is the news story? And what might be the untold story? And I think that's a neat way to do it with individuals in our community, because I think there's a lot of untold stories that we can learn about. So this routine invites students to reveal multiple layers of meaning in an image, text, or journalistic report. Each layer addresses a key dimension of quality global journalism, the central, most visible story, the way the story helps us understand the lives of fellow humans, the ways in which the story speaks to systemic global issues, what is new and instructive about the story and issues explored, and the important absences or unreported aspects of the story. So that is several different ways to get your students to think globally with the Learning Network. I also just want to point out, when we're thinking about unveiling stories, that we have a lot of other great ways for students to get to know people from different cultures. One series in particular, I had yet to find a place where I could highlight it this year, and so I'm plugging it in now. In EBSCO eBooks, there is a series called My Teenage Life, and this is a series where students learn about different cultures, and they learn through a teen's experience. So what is that teen today doing in that cultural area? What are they eating? How are they going about their day? How are they going to school? So really look at that, have your students take advantage of it. It's a great way to get some other unveiled stories. And then Mango also. So we have Mango Languages, the #1 highest rated language learning app. And there's tons of cultural competence along the way with Mango. So this could really help your students with understanding that how else and why. Understanding the different cultures of different people will impact how else they might want to convey something.